How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Aquarium Talk TV. I'm Gage. This is my good friend Peter McHugh.
Thank you, sir, for having me on the YouTube channel show.
Absolutely. Today is going to be a pretty cool video. I'm actually making this video for one of my subscribers. I know that I am pretty late. I understand, and I'm sorry for that. So today's episode is going to be about how to create a saltwater tank from bottom to top. So my friend Peter and I here are going to give you some tips and, discuss a couple things in between on how to go about this. So, starting off, best advice you can give them to start right off, they say, hey, I'd like a saltwater tank. Where do you start with that?
You must cycle your tank.
Yes.
It is extremely important to cycle your tank. A lot of people start this hobby and they go, whoa, there's some cool fish. Whoa, there's some cool shrimp. Whoa, there's some cool creatures and I want it, and I want it now. They've got, America has got this whole thing. They're like, okay, I want it, it's a mentality of American culture, but it's not just American culture. We just have tendencies as human beings to want instantaneous things. But it is extremely important to cycle your tank. To do that, it's going to take a good 3 weeks. Now, there are ways to shortcut. There are chemicals out there. But me, I don't do no puny shortcuts, okay?
Puny shortcuts because you know it in life. A little bit of Arnold Schwarzenegger right there. So, yeah, it is. It's really important to cycle your tank. I've seen people, and unfortunately Peter had this experience. We get excited, we look at things, we go, yeah, I mean, that test doesn't look that bad, and water looks okay, let's try it. What happens, Pete?
Crap hits the fan real fast.
Real fast.
I'm trying to keep this PG for the kiddos. But another thing that we mentioned in a previous take that did not make the cut, or we forgot to mention in a previous take that did not make the cut, folks think that, well, maybe I can just use my tap water.
Yeah.
And you could at your own risk. We're not saying you couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
We're just saying it's kind of dangerous to do that because there are a lot of chemicals within tap water, within city water, within regular water that you don't want in your tank. Here's our advice for that. There is a specific water called reverse osmosis, RO water. Use that, please.
Mm-hmm.
Please, I beg you.
Yeah,
use that water.
Exactly. That's a great point because, when you're first starting out the cycling of your tank, it's really important that all your parameters and all the things, the ingredients, if you will, that you're putting into this are correct. If you use tap water, you're introducing phosphates, you're introducing heavy metals, you're introducing, some of the stuff that's not so bad like calcium, but you have a high risk of introducing heavy metals. Heavy metals in a saltwater tank will kill everything very quickly, very quickly. So if you fill your tank up with tap water and you don't, understand, the human body's different. We can drink all that. We need the metals, we need the salts, we need all that kind of stuff that's within the tap water to maintain life. But it's different in the ocean, or it's different in a saltwater tank. If you fill your tank up with that, and your live rock, which we'll get to in a minute, I'll describe what that is, holds on to those heavy metals, over time it seeps that out, and first of all, it's going to throw off the whole process of cycling. Anything that you put in there, it's more than likely going to kill. So, RO water, reverse osmosis, you can get it at, we get it at the Culligan store here in Big Rapids. You can also get it at, sometimes Walmart and Myers have those water machines, those big water processing machines. You just put a jug underneath it and fill it up. Basically what RO water is it goes through a certain filtration process and then it's hit with a UV light as it's exiting. And that just kills all the bacteria that could be in it. And then there's also the process that strips all the chemicals from it. So it is clean as you can get water. So there's really nothing in it except water. So that's the best way to go. First thing in establishing a saltwater tank is you need to think to yourself, what kind of tank do I want? Do you want a fish-only tank or do you want a reef tank? If you want a fish-only tank, there's some things that you can skip, which we'll get to. And then if you want a reef tank, there's some things that you can't skip, which we'll also get to. Once you decide fish or reef tank, the next thing you need to decide is size of the tank. What can you tell them about the size of the tank?
Friends, if you want to be adventurous, if you want to live on the wild side, you could begin with a small tank. If you are a beginner, however, I would advise against it. Here's the deal. Here's how most people think. Well, if I have a bigger tank, there's more that could potentially mess up. When you're dealing with a smaller tank, there's not a lot of volume you're dealing with. So if something goes wrong, if something goes sideways, if something is off, potentially things could crash quicker for you because you don't have that much to deal with. See, if you have a bigger tank, you're more likely to build yourself, let's call it a grace area. Like if something messes up in a huge tank or a bigger tank, if something starts to crash, you might have a chance to save it. But if you're dealing with a smaller tank, if stuff's going to go downhill, it's going to go downhill really, really quick, more than likely.
Exactly. Exactly. And this grace area that Peter is describing is, if you have a 10-gallon tank, you compare that to a 50-gallon tank, let's get the obviousness out of the way, which is the fact that there's more water within that 50-gallon tank. This is the grace period that we're talking about. So how I can explain this is, when you have evaporation in your tank, whether it be from lighting, just the fact the water's 78 degrees, whatever it is, you start to change the chemistry of the tank. When water evaporates, it leaves behind the salt content. So naturally, as evaporation occurs, the salt content within your saltwater aquarium gets higher. We want to maintain a salinity of 1.023 to 1.026. This is your safe range. Anything much above 1.026 is too high, and as goes with 1.023, anything below that is too low. So as water evaporates, your salt content goes up. What also happens is the chemistry besides the salt alters. Your calcium, your magnesium, your strontium, your iodide, all those chemicals that are within that tank get kind of messed with. Less water. Now, if you have a 50-gallon tank and you have evaporation in that tank, the evaporation that occurs in that 50-gallon tank is nowhere near as substantial, even if it's the same amount of evaporation, say an inch and an inch. It's nowhere near as substantial of a hit to the water chemistry as it would be in a 10-gallon tank. 1 inch of evaporation in a 10-gallon tank, that's a lot of water. 1 inch of evaporation in a 50-gallon tank, it's not so much. So the chemistry really isn't going to swing that much. So the larger the tank, the safer you're going to be as far as chemistry is concerned when it comes to evaporation and water changes. Now, okay, you've decided, hey, I want this kind of tank. Well, let's just start with this. The very basics that you're going to need is tank size, what you want, and then let's talk about what goes in the tank. Very first thing that you're going to get, starting from bottom to top, is your live sand. Now, depending on the size of the tank, you want 1 pound of live sand per gallon of water. So if you have a 50-gallon tank, we're getting 50 pounds of live sand. Working our way up, the next thing that we're going to get is live rock, or rock. Now, live rock, Pete, why don't you tell them about the pluses and the minuses, the positives and negatives of that live rock.
Basically, live rock, here's a plus. That helps boost your cycling. It also creates a more realistic seascape, okay? You're basically creating an ecosystem when you put together a saltwater tank. There are benefits to it. Let's start. There are beneficial creatures that could possibly help cycle and help create an environment that's going to help all your creatures prosper, all your fish, all your corals, whatever. But then there are also things like dreaded bristle worms, and I've experienced those, and
They're bad.
They're bad. Plus, they're ugly looking. Not to digress, because there is certain value. There are pluses and minuses in live rock, and as opposed to creating your own live rock with dry rock. But one of the things I want to start, with or go to, when you're cycling, when you've reached that cycling point where, okay, I've done it for 3 weeks, maybe you've taken the shortcuts and used the chemicals to cycle shorter, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you're going to do it right. Start with a strong basis. But once you've cycled your tank and you want to see if anything is viable or the environment is viable, don't go out to your fish store and start looking for fish and be like, oh, that's bad. Or meaning, oh, that's good. I'm going to get that fish because he's BA. Or I'm going to start, that's the fish I want. What I'm saying is, get it later. Because here's the thing. Don't go to your fish store, pick out a fish that you really want, shell out big bucks, and then have it die. So here's what I would say. If you're going to start with a damsel or something smaller that it's not going to dig a hole in your pocket and say, okay, I died, but I only spent $6 as opposed to 50, 60, 70, Start with a fish where if you end up dealing with a loss and something goes wrong, you're not out $100 or what. And it sounds drastic, but start small because this hobby is expensive.
That's exactly right. And just like he says, these damsels, I mean, the average cost of a saltwater fish, roughly, give or take, is right around $25, $30. Now, of course, there are fish that are significantly more, and there are fish that are less. But you can just about bet that any fish store that you walk into, most of the fish that you're going to want in your aquarium, they're going to cost you $40 or more. So that being said, as Pete was saying, as far as cycling is concerned, put something cheap in there. Damsels are $6. If they live, then you know that your tank is cycled pretty well. The other thing that you can do is you can go out if you don't want to spend $6 or you don't want to put a damsel in there because you've heard that damsels are mean, which is true.
And 2 or 3 on little crabs.
Exactly. Yeah, spend a couple bucks on some hermit crabs or some snails and throw them in there. If they live because they're more sensitive than fish are, you're good to go. But don't let that be the only thing that dictates, hey, my tank is good. Get yourself a good test kit. Test for things like ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. If those are all clear, you are good to go. So now that we've established a tank size, we know that we need live sand and we need live rock. Let's talk about dry rock. We've gone over the benefits of live rock. Live rock comes straight from the ocean. So there could be good things and there could be bad things. But it also cycles your tank a lot faster. Dry rock, what is that? Well, dry rock was at one point live rock. When I say live rock or live sand, what I mean is it's rock and sand that contains bacteria and possibly, and most likely, little sea creatures.
It's alive!
It literally is. Like, the live rock that you're going to get, it's every time you see it at a fish store, you're going to look at it, it's going to be in the water, it's going to be cycling, it's going to be doing its thing, because it is live. There's bacteria on it, beneficial bacteria, and as we said, little critters that could be living in there. Dry rock was at one point live rock that they have just allowed to dry. So anything that is on it or in it is no longer alive. Here's the plus side to live rock. To dry rock. Dry rock is cheap. Live rock costs about $5, $6 a pound, plus you're going to pay for water weight. So you can get a nice rock. One rock could cost you $50 easy all day. Dry rock, on the other hand, is about $2 to $3 a pound, give or take. So if you're going to start an aquarium and you don't mind waiting a little longer, dry rock. It'll save you money that you can spend somewhere else. So live sand, that's going to be the platform for which you build on. That also has things in it that help cycle your tank. It holds nutrients, it holds wastes, it helps the cycling process. Then you throw your live rock in there, or your dry rock, whatever you prefer. Next, I want you to do a little bit of research on salt. There's tons and tons of different kinds of salts that are out there. Don't just go with the most expensive one, because to be quite honest with you, I've gone from both ends of the spectrum. I've spent a lot of money and I've spent a little money. And I can tell you from experience that the results are pretty much the same. So a really good one to go by, not trying to market anything here. Live, what is it? Instant Ocean. Yeah, there you go. Instant Ocean. It's cheap. It's good. It's been used for, it's probably the longest known salt brand in this hobby. It's been used for years, and it's always had good results. You can get a 50-pound bag of it for about $20, $23. It's good to go. And they make one called reef crystals, which would be essential for reef aquarium. Lots of different corals need that extra nutrients. So you can do something like that. If you want to spend a little bit of extra money because you heard something's better, hey, that's your call. You know, do what you want to do. So we're gonna need the sand, we're gonna need the rock, we're gonna need the RO water, not tap water, and your salt. I'll tell you an experience that I had for some of you who say, well, I got good well water. I live out in the woods, on the river. I have probably some of the best water you will ever experience. Here's the thing. Within that, and I even tested my water. I tested my well water. I had good levels of calcium. I had hardly any phosphates. I didn't have any of that nitrate stuff. It was real good water. So I used it. Here's what happened. Along with the additives that were already naturally in the water, like the calcium and the magnesium that naturally come from tap or well water, I was also adding chemicals to my tank to boost those specific levels because I had coral. What I didn't think about, I didn't put two and two together, was when I was adding tap water, I was already adding, say, 300 parts per million of calcium. And then on top of that, I was also adding liquid calcium. So I was overdosing. What ended up happening was a lot of my corals melted away because my alkalinity was actually too high. So you can use tap water if you have very clean tap water. However, it's one of those things that we don't recommend because even very clean tap water, as I just described, can cause an imbalance in chemicals if you're not constantly checking it. It's not a very good check and balance system because you never really know where your water is going to be. Your water could be good. The next water change you do, you could have abnormally high levels of calcium or alkalinity. So just use RO water, save yourself the hassle, and you will never regret it. So now that we've got all the basics made up, you're going to mix all your salt up, add it, and wait about 3 weeks and let it cycle. Tell them, what's their tank going to look like when it cycles, Pete? Tell them about that process.
When it starts out, it's going to look like crap because when it starts out, you're gonna see, you're gonna look at the tank, and you're gonna be like, "That look dirty. That look really dirty," and it's dirty. And so once it cycles and all your filtration is good, and I think Gabe said this already, but make sure your filtration is good from the beginning. It's just a wise move. Once everything is cycled, it's going to be a little bit clearer and a little more open. I know this is a beginning process, and it's just basically starting your tank. And this video is just basically, getting your tank started, getting the process started. But here's one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you. When you're starting this tank, make sure each and every fish that you're going to put in there, maybe not your cycling tester so much, but look into the temperaments of each fish or creature you're going to put in there, because this is essentially an ecosystem, and you could deal with fights and chaos and territory issues, and you want to make sure that your ecosystem that you're creating is hospitable and everybody's going to get along and play nice.
That's absolutely right, and that's that's great. That's very true. So I mean, as you can see, there's a lot that's involved with starting a saltwater tank. Once you get your live sand, your live rock, your salt that you like to use, your RO water, you put it all together, you dump it all in the tank, you let it cycle for 3 weeks, test it. No ammonia, no nitrate, no nitrite. You can have small amounts of nitrate, but if you have nitrite, you're not ready to start yet. But once the ammonia and the nitrite are gone and your nitrate is between 5 to 10 parts per million, you're good to go. And then, as we said before, throw in a little test subject, make sure everything's kosher. The only other thing that you're really going to need, you're going to need a protein skimmer. It is a must. Don't try to work around it. And you're going to need some type of filtration. You can do a sump, you can do a hang on the back skimmer. If you do a hang on the back skimmer, you're going to be more meticulous. You need to be more meticulous about your water changes. There is nothing wrong with not having a sump. I don't have a sump.
Yeah.
But just make sure you do your water changes.
Yes, indeed. I was going to, just to close out my final thoughts here, I was going to say overfiltration is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I don't care if you have a small tank, I don't care if you have a big tank. Overfiltration is a good thing. Because, like, if you're dealing with underfiltration, chaos could happen quicker. So to be on the safe side, overfiltration is your friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Things like overfeeding, it's really simple to do. Oh, I don't know if my fish got enough to eat. Let me add some more food. Overfeeding is one of the biggest problems in this hobby, and it creates really dirty water, bad chemistry real quick. So overfiltration, as Peter said, if you have a 40-gallon tank and the filter that you want to get says, well, it's good for 50 gallons or more, get it. Because you know what? You've just covered your 40 gallons plus 10, possibly 20 more. You'll be good to go. You won't ever have to worry about much. So the only other thing that you're really going to need within this whole startup process, besides your filtration, is lighting. If you have a fish-only tank, which, as the name states, it only has fish in it, there are no coral, make sure there are no coral, then lighting doesn't really matter. If you have a reef tank and you have coral, then lighting is going to play an important role. The bigger the tank, the more lighting you're going to need, not only for the width, but the depth as well. Some corals like to be on top, some like to be on the bottom, and then there's a bunch that like to be in between. So you have LEDs, T5s, and metal halides are the big ones. Whatever you prefer, doesn't really matter, they all grow about the same. However, I will tell you, LEDs last longer and produce less heat than T5s and metal halides.
And you don't have to change the bulbs.
You never have to change the bulbs unless something really strange happens. You buy them once and you're done. That's it. And there's a lot of really, really nice LEDs out nowadays. Save your, you know, it's expensive at first. An LED light can range, depending on the size of your tank and depending on what you want for quality, they can range anywhere from $50 to $600 a piece. But you know what though, T5s, here's the thing. Yeah, I can go out and buy a T5, you know, setup for maybe $100, $150, give me a real nice one. Those bulbs are about $20 a piece. And you have to replace them every 6 months. So if you have 6 bulbs in your T5 structure, every 6 months, you're going to be spending another $120. So that's, you know, that's what it is. It's what it comes down to. So you buy an LED once and it's good to go. So, well, I hope this is hoped. I hope that, wow! That's my cue to end this video. I hoped this is hoped. I hoped that this has helped.
What he's saying is, I hope this helps you.
Yes, yes. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Pete?
No, I think we've covered it. The reason, just as a little humor into the video, this is actually take 2.
The idiot is.
But the reason we decided to do it again is we didn't say jack crap about water the first time. Water's important.
We told them everything that they need except water. So we figured we might as well do a take 2. So this is take 2. I mean, I think it'd be funny one of these days to make a bloopers reel and actually produce to you guys the video plus the bloopers, because we make some stupid mistakes. Like, I hope you hoped. There's just really dumb stuff that happens, and it'd probably be humorous to you guys.
Although when I realized we didn't say jack crap about water, we were off camera anyway, so it's like...
Yeah, the video was done, we were reviewing it, we're getting ready to send it out, and
I'm
then
like, oh crap!
it goes, oh man, there's nothing about water here. And I thought to myself, and I looked, and I said, oh man, you're right. So here we are, take 2. But I hope that it's been better, I hope it's been more beneficial, and I hope that it's a little clearer now for you guys. If you guys have any specific questions or comments about anything that we did today, or there's anything that you feel like we didn't cover, shoot me a message. I was typically 97% of the time that I get a message, I reply instantly. Sometimes when I say, hey, I'll make a video for you, I'm a little delayed on that, but that's why I'm trying to play catch up. So I'm sorry to this specific subscriber who was wanting this video. I know this is a couple weeks late. I apologize. I'll try to do it better the next time. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. Shout out to all my subscribers. Please like and share. And thank you, Peter, for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me, man. Peace and love, everybody.
God bless.